Leonardo da Vinci is one of the most mysterious geniuses in history. So many myths and legends surround him that it's often difficult to separate fact from fiction. He was the brightest figure of the Renaissance, and many consider him the greatest engineer and scientist, laying the foundations of almost all modern knowledge. But was that really the case? Did he truly invent everything himself, or was he simply reinterpreting what was already known? Did he really encode his writings? And what was the true nature of the eccentric man who became the model of the so-called universal human? In this episode, we'll explore Leonardo's groundbreaking designs, his detailed sketches of flying machines, inventions for diving, and concepts of warfare. We'll also talk about his relationship with a young companion, his studies of corpses, his vision of the ideal man, and the painter's ironic hint hidden within it, as well as what Leonardo himself believed had offended God.
Leonardo was the illegitimate son of a 25-year-old notary, Piero, and a 16-year-old peasant girl named Caterina. He was born on April 15th, 1452. At that time, surnames as we know them didn't really exist. Da Vinci simply meant from Vinci, the small town near Florence where he was born. He grew up in his father's household and received a decent upbringing, but the Florentine Notaries Guild refused to accept illegitimate children. That meant Leonardo couldn't inherit his father's profession or enter a university. Years later, critics mocked him for lacking formal education, especially for not knowing Latin. Leonardo replied sharply, "Fools, they strut around, proud and arrogant, dressed in the works of others. Do they not see that my knowledge is built not on borrowed words, but on direct experience?" At 14, Leonardo's father arranged for him to apprentice in the workshop of the famous Florentine artist Andrea del Verrocchio. There, he studied anatomy, mechanics, geometry, and both painting and sculpting through hands-on practice. Apprentices created works for commissions and sales, and it's possible Leonardo even modeled for his teacher. The peak of their collaboration was the painting The Baptism of Christ, depicting John the Baptist and angels on the banks of the Jordan. The angel on the left was painted by Leonardo using his own invention, sfumato, a technique of softening outlines to make the image appear more natural. The first task of a painter, Leonardo believed, was to make a flat surface look like a living three-dimensional body that separates itself from the background. By the age of 20, Leonardo qualified as a master in the Painters Guild and soon opened his own studio. Yet over the next 5 years, he received only 3 commissions. He refused one and left the other 2 unfinished. According to his biographers, he constantly set himself extremely difficult tasks, but once he found the solution, he quickly lost interest or got distracted by something new. His notebooks are filled with examples of this restless curiosity. Measure Milan and its surroundings. Sketch Milan. Let a mathematician explain how to calculate the area of a triangle. Inflate the lungs of a pig and see if they expand in length as well as in width or only in width. Neither payments, nor heavy fines, nor even the pressure of prestigious clients could force Leonardo to work faster. When Pope Leo X sent envoys to check on a commissioned map, they reported that Leonardo hadn't even started it. Instead, he had invented a varnish he planned to use once the map was complete. One version of the story says Leonardo began working on the portrait of Lisa Gherardini, the wife of Florentine merchant Francesco del Giocondo, in 1503. He kept refining it for years. The client never received the painting. When Leonardo died in 1519, the portrait, now known as the Mona Lisa, was still in his workshop. In the end, Leonardo left behind only 15 finished paintings with confirmed authorship. Still, each of these works is considered a national treasure in the country where it resides. His painting Salvator Mundi, possibly only partially painted by his hand, sold at auction for $450 million. Meanwhile, the Mona Lisa holds the Guinness World Record for the highest insurance valuation of any painting, over $1 billion. To own even a fragment of Leonardo's legacy, you'd have to be a millionaire, which is far beyond the reach of most people.
After the failure of his own workshop, Leonardo found employment as an engineer for the Duke of Milan, Ludovico Sforza. To impress him, Leonardo created or improved designs for fantastic war machines: a giant crossbow, a turtle-shaped tank, an early version of the machine gun, a vessel with 11 barrels, a submarine, and a scythe-armed chariot. The latter had been used in a more primitive form by the Persians against Alexander the Great. The only military invention by Leonardo that gained real recognition during his lifetime was the wheel lock, a firing mechanism for firearms that produced sparks by rotating a small steel wheel. Following a plague in Milan, Leonardo proposed a project for an ideal city built on 2 levels. The upper level would serve as living space and pedestrian streets, while the lower one would hold canals for trade and sewage. Although nearly all modern cities are based on such layered principles, Sforza never put Leonardo's plan into action. Draw the wings of a bird along with the chest muscles that power them. Then do the same with a human body to show the possibility of flight. This idea obsessed Leonardo throughout his life. He designed dozens of flying machines, including a sketch of a man suspended beneath a pyramid-shaped parachute. Leonardo wrote beside it, "If a man has a tent made of starched linen, 12 arms across and 12 arms high, he will be able to descend safely from any great height." Of course, none of these inventions were perfect. His parachute lacked an opening at the top to stabilize descent, and his design for a helicopter didn't take into account the torque that would spin the frame below the rotor. Still, his vision was extraordinary, and his screw-shaped rotor was remarkably close to modern concepts. In 1502, Leonardo became a military engineer once again. His first task, design a double-layered leather vest with a hollow border that could be inflated before jumping into water. He also invented goggles for underwater observation, and even a breathing apparatus, reed tubes reinforced with steel rings to withstand water pressure. This gear included a jacket, pants, and a buoy. Leonardo left behind 7,200 pages of notes and sketches, today known as the codices. One of them, the Codex Leicester, was purchased by Bill Gates in 1994 for over $30 million.
It was once believed that Leonardo used mirror writing as a form of code to protect his secrets. In truth, his notes can be read both with and without a mirror. The reversed letters and numbers were not encryption at all, but a natural result of his being left-handed. His handwriting and even his brushstrokes were shaped by this. Contemporaries described Leonardo as a man of striking beauty, tall and strong, with long golden hair. Likely dyed, since his notebooks contain a recipe for a walnut-based dye that would give hair a reddish-brown shine. He carried himself with dignity, and even in later years dressed fashionably in rich colors like dark purple, red, and pink, preferring velvet and satin. Leonardo never married and had no children, but he was often seen in the company of handsome young men. At age 24, Leonardo and 3 others were accused of sodomy with a 17-year-old youth, a serious crime at the time. He escaped punishment only thanks to the intervention of a man close to Florence's ruler. The experience left a mark on him, as Leonardo later wrote, "Those who cannot restrain their lust place themselves on the same level as animals." Leonardo also pursued anatomy with extraordinary dedication. He dissected human corpses and created over 200 drawings, carefully illustrating each bone, muscle group, and internal organ. He believed artists should reconstruct the human body from the inside out. First the skeleton, then the muscles, then the skin, and only then the clothing. Had Leonardo published his anatomical drawings in a book, it would have advanced medicine by centuries. Sadly, they remained unknown until almost 400 years after his death. In 1490, Leonardo studied a treatise by the Roman engineer Vitruvius. There he found a description of the ideal proportions of the human body. Leonardo illustrated these ideas by sketching a man with arms and legs outstretched, fitting perfectly within both a circle and a square. He also corrected Vitruvius's math. For example, Vitruvius claimed the foot should be 1/6 of a man's height, while Leonardo argued it was closer to 1/7. He placed the male genitals at the center of the square and the navel at the center of the circle. Some scholars even suggest the Vitruvian man is a self-portrait. Leonardo drew it at about 30 years old, and the figure seems roughly the same age, with facial features resembling those of his known portraits. Leonardo himself hinted that painters often used their own likenesses in their works.
Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 3 years of his life at the court of his admirer, King Francis I of France. The king provided him with a generous pension and a comfortable residence. For his patron, Leonardo created a mechanical lion that could walk across the stage and open its chest to reveal a cluster of lilies. It is believed that in his final 2 years, Leonardo's right hand may have been paralyzed. This could explain why works such as the Mona Lisa were left unfinished. On April 23, 1519, he wrote his will, and on May 2nd, he passed away. According to accounts of his final moments, Leonardo confessed on his deathbed that he had offended God and mankind by not dedicating himself to art as fully as he should have. And now, a question for you. Which part of Leonardo da Vinci's legacy do you consider the most valuable? Share your thoughts in the comments.